Hey, Chad, I'm off here, EFT Guy. Had a great supervision group this morning. They asked me a question about beginning with intentionality with couples. And I was like, man, that's a great question. I said, you know what? Today I'm taking a couple out of their attachment history and intake session. And this is going to be our first session. I said, I have a plan for that. I have a plan for what I want to do in my sessions and what I'm going to do with this couple. And they're like, really? What is it? What do you expect? And so for me, I started to talk about what do I do after attachment history and what do I do after the intake session? What's my first session going to look like? And some of this is really, really practical. So when they come in after their attachment history intake session, I'm going to get real quick to kind of like check in, make sure there's not a big explosion or something I have to process. But I'm going to say, that I want to get to the work. I kind of have a plan, and I'm going to say, I want to start with one of you. Who is it? But I want to be casual with that a little bit. My intent is to get to the withdrawer or the identified patient sometimes, if you want to think of it that way, the person who's maybe less engaged, right? And so I'm going to get to them, and I do that for a couple reasons. A lot of times my pursuers have more tolerance for kind of the mess. So if my withdrawer is kind of telling their story, I feel like my pursuers generally can kind of like tolerate that better. I think a lot of times if I work with the pursuer first, it kind of shuts down my withdrawer and it's hard to get them back in the room. So I personally really like to start that with my withdrawer if I can. And so I'm going to do that casually, but then I'm going to start to build temp. So how do you know when things are going wrong in your relationship? Use a cue, get as vivid as I can with that trigger, and then I'm going to start to try to understand a bit of emotion. I'm not trying to go to model a self or the deepest thing they've ever felt, but I'll use conjecture to get something semi-vulnerable. And then I'm going to say, okay, and this is how you make sense of that. And that's what you tend to do is go away. So I'm going to enact that as quickly as I can. I'm going to say, can you turn to your partner and say, when I feel this, I generally show you that, some form of that. You may see me do this, but I'm actually feeling that. Something a little bit deeper. As we do that, I always like to just go ahead and process that on both sides, and I am always laying in attachment meaning. I'm queuing that up as much as I can, especially early on. I want them to start to understand this is happening because we're fighting for the relationship in this way. And then the next thing I want to do is switch over to the pursuer after I processed and kind of do the same thing. But I'm going to use that cue, whatever it was, whatever I saw the withdrawer doing, right? And then I tend to go to the garage, right? I'm going to say, when you see your withdrawer going to the garage, you see their back, what does that do inside you? How does that hit you? So I'm using that as the trigger. Now we're starting to step down. Same thing, emotion, meaning, protective action tendency. Now I'm going to enact that over to the withdrawer the same way I did. Same sort of enactment. I generally show you this, but I feel this deeper thing. Process with both sides. Move to the big summary of what we just did. So if I can do all that in my fourth total session, but first real couples session, if I can do all that, man, I feel like I've got a really good shot at doing some good things for my couple and really getting them on the path to success. I'm going to say, hey, take this with you. Go look for this cycle. Look for this thing that shows up and takes over your relationship. Y'all, we get better together. I hope you're getting focused and using these as something that really can help you transition to a more focused level of work. Thanks for checking this out.